I used to work at a mid-size hotel, the kind of place stuck between business trips and family vacations. On paper, my job was simple: check people in, smile politely, handle complaints, and make sure the Wi-Fi password actually worked. But in reality, working at a hotel is basically watching strangers live out the weirdest parts of their lives in public while pretending it's totally normal. I've seen people try to dry socks in the microwave, sneak pets into pet-free rooms, and even one guy who tried to convince us that his goat was an emotional support animal. I'm not joking, a goat. Another time, a completely naked guest chased a pizza delivery guy down the hallway because the pepperoni was wrong. And yes, I had to write an incident report about that. Try explaining that in professional language. So yeah, I'd seen some wild things. But nothing, and I mean nothing, compared to the night everything went off the rails. The night when the police, paramedics, and even the local news ended up in our lobby. The night when I got blamed for something I didn't do. And it all started with one guest. One VIP who thought the rules didn't apply to him. Working at a hotel is like living in a zoo where the animals pay you to watch them act wild. And the craziest part? Most of the time, it's not the travelers from other countries or the tourists on vacation, it's the regular people. The ones who drive in from the next town over, book a weekend stay, and treat the place like Vegas. There was this one couple who checked in every other Friday. On paper, they were Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. In reality, he was married to someone else, and she definitely wasn't his wife. Every time they showed up, they'd request the exact same room on the 4th floor. I didn't care about their arrangement, none of my business, but one night his real wife stormed into the lobby screaming, dragging 2 kids behind her. She had found the reservation emails. I just stood there at the front desk, watching the showdown go down live like an episode of Jerry Springer. She yelled, the mistress yelled, the guy fainted right there on the lobby carpet. We had to call paramedics. I still can't smell his cologne without thinking of that disaster. Then there was the bachelor party. These guys rented 3 rooms and promised they'd keep it chill. By midnight, they had filled the hot tub with beer, dragged a mattress into the hallway, and tried to ride the luggage carts like bumper cars. At one point, one of them convinced a random guest to play security guard by wearing a stolen housekeeping uniform. That ended with a drunk groomsman being tackled into a vending machine. Guess who had to file another 10-page incident report? Yeah. Me. And don't even get me started on the weird noise complaints. I once had a guest call the desk at 3 a.m. and whisper, the couple next door is howling. I thought maybe they meant loud intimacy. Nope. Turned out the couple had smuggled in an actual husky, and it was running laps around the room, knocking over lamps and howling at the TV. When I knocked on their door, the guy looked at me dead serious and said, he's a service dog. Right. Because your emotional support husky definitely needed HBO at full blast. All of those stories sound insane, but they were just regular Tuesday nights in hotel life. We laughed about them, rolled our eyes, cleaned up the mess, and moved on. But here's the thing, after a while, you start to think you've seen it all. You build up this immunity, like nothing could surprise you anymore. And that's exactly when the universe decides to humble you. Because the night I met him, our so-called VIP guest, was the night I realized hotel chaos could go from funny to terrifying in a heartbeat. He wasn't a drunk tourist. He wasn't a cheating husband or a college kid with too much beer. He was someone powerful. Someone who thought he could do whatever he wanted, and that the rules didn't exist for him. And I was the unlucky idiot who ended up standing in his way. The night I met him is burned into my brain like a bad tattoo. It started out like any other shift, me behind the front desk, half awake on bad coffee, scrolling through the next day's check-ins to see what fresh chaos might be headed my way. We had a wedding block booked for Saturday, a soccer team coming through Sunday, and a handful of business travelers sprinkled in. Nothing unusual. Then I saw the note on one reservation, VIP guest. Priority treatment. Handle with discretion. Those notes are always red flags. VIP usually means someone rich enough to think the world revolves around them, or someone with a fragile ego will explode if the Wi-Fi hiccups. And this guy was both. His name, let's call him Mr. K, was attached to some company I'd actually heard of. He rolled up just before midnight in a shiny black SUV with tinted windows, the kind you see in political scandals or rap videos. The moment he walked into the lobby, the temperature changed. Not literally, but you could feel it. He was tall, mid-40s, expensive suit that probably cost more than my car. His cologne hit the air like a weapon, sharp, musky, overwhelming. Behind him trailed 3 younger guys, all with the same cocky were important swagger. I knew right then this wasn't going to be a quiet night. "Reservation under K," he said, tossing his ID and credit card onto the desk without looking at me. He was on his phone, barking orders to someone. The card was platinum, heavy enough to kill a cockroach with. I did the usual scanned, verified, smiled, but he didn't even look at me once. When I slid the room keys across the counter, he didn't take them. One of his lackeys did. "Top floor. Corner suite. Champagne waiting," he said flatly, as if it was a demand, not a question. "Of course, sir," I said, forcing my best customer service voice even though none of that had been requested in the reservation. While housekeeping scrambled upstairs to raid the minibar for champagne and toss some glasses onto a tray, I tried not to roll my eyes. They disappeared into the elevator and I thought, fine, let them drink their overpriced champagne, make a mess, and pass out. I was wrong. By 1 a.m., the phone started ringing. Guests on the 9th floor complained of loud music. I trudged upstairs, knocked on the suite door, and was hit with a wall of bass so strong it rattled my bones. One of the younger guys cracked the door open, smirking. Behind him, I saw flashing lights, heard shouting, laughter, bottles clinking. Definitely not quiet business travel. "Sir, we've had complaints," I said as calmly as possible. The guy shrugged. "We'll keep it down." He didn't. By 2 a.m., there were more complaints. By 3, housekeeping found vomit in the hallway. By 4, someone reported smoke. I sprinted up with a fire extinguisher, thinking we had an actual emergency, only to find one of Mr. K's buddies trying to light a cigar off the stovetop in the kitchenette. That's when I called the manager on duty. "We need to shut this down," I said. "But here's the problem, people like Mr. K don't get shut down." When the manager showed up, instead of backing me up, he pulled me aside and whispered, "This guy's important. Corporate told us to treat him like royalty. Just let it go." Let it go? Guests were threatening to leave, the entire floor smelled like weed, and Mr. K was screaming with laughter loud enough to wake the dead. But sure, let it go. By sunrise, I was exhausted, the floor looked like a war zone, and I thought maybe, just maybe, it was finally over. But then, just as I was clocking out, I saw Rosa from housekeeping rush into the lobby, pale as a ghost. "There's a girl," she whispered. "In the suite. She won't wake up." And that was the moment everything went from chaotic to catastrophic. When Rosa said those words, "There's a girl. She won't wake up," my stomach dropped like a stone. I'd seen plenty of wild nights in hotels, people passed out drunk, couples fighting, even an occasional overdose scare. But something in her face told me this wasn't the usual drama. I grabbed the spare key and headed for the top floor. By the time we got to the suite, the hallway already reeked of stale smoke, spilled alcohol, and something sour I couldn't place. The door was cracked open, bass still thumping inside. I pushed it wider and froze. The suite looked like a hurricane hit it. Bottles everywhere, food ground into the carpet, a lamp shattered on the floor. On the couch, one of Mr. K's friends was passed out cold, snoring so loudly it vibrated. In the bedroom, though, that's where we found her. She was young, maybe early 20s. Makeup smeared, dress twisted, shoes off. She was sprawled across the bed, motionless. Rosa hovered by the door, whispering a prayer under her breath. I rushed to her side and shook her gently. Nothing. My heart hammered. I put my hand near her nose, thank God, faint breaths. "Call 911, I snapped. Rosa bolted. I stayed by her side until the paramedics stormed in 10 minutes later, lights flashing in the parking lot below. They checked her vitals, loaded her onto a stretcher, and wheeled her out past the gawking guests who had come out of their rooms to watch the drama unfold. I wanted to disappear into the wallpaper. Then Mr. K appeared. Perfectly composed, like none of this chaos touched him. He didn't look at the girl being carried out. He looked at me. Straight through me. "This is your fault," he said coldly. "You should have handled this better." I blinked, stunned. My fault? I was the one who called 911. I was the one who kept her alive until help came. Meanwhile, he was partying like a king while his guest nearly died in his bed. By the time the cops showed up, Mr. K had flipped the narrative completely. "We asked the hotel for help multiple times," he lied smoothly. "The staff ignored us. If anything happens to her, it's on them." One officer pulled me aside, notebook ready. "So, what exactly happened tonight?" I tried to explain: the noise complaints, the smoking, the girl unresponsive in the bedroom. But as I talked, I could see it in his eyes, he'd already heard a different version. And guess whose version carried more weight? The powerful businessman or the night shift clerk making barely above minimum wage? By morning, the suite was sealed off, police tape across the door. Guests whispered in the lobby, phones out, recording every move. Corporate called within hours: "Do not speak to press. Do not make statements. Legal will handle this." Handle it? I was the one the cops had grilled for 2 hours. I was the one who'd been treated like a suspect instead of a worker doing his job. And worst of all, I was the one they'd decided to blame. Because Mr. K had money. Mr. K had connections. And me? I was just the guy at the desk who happened to be standing there when everything went to hell. The morning after was the longest shift of my life. I hadn't slept, hadn't eaten, my uniform still smelled like smoke from the chaos upstairs. I walked into the lobby at 7 a.m. and instantly knew the story had already spread. Guests were huddled in little groups, whispering and staring at me like I was some kind of criminal. Phones were out recording me, recording the police tape still across the top floor. I wanted to crawl out of my own skin. Corporate had sent out a generic email to all staff: "Do not comment on the situation. All inquiries must be referred to management." Which basically meant, you're on your own, but if you say the wrong thing, we'll hang you out to dry. By 10 a.m., the first news crew rolled up. A local channel, cameras flashing, reporter in a suit with a too white smile. He shoved a mic in my face as I tried to wheel a luggage cart past him. "Sir, can you comment on the young woman who was hospitalized here last night? Do you know if she's alive?" I froze. My throat went dry. "No comment," I muttered, ducking away. But the camera still caught me, and the headline later that night was, "Hotel Worker Refuses to Speak on Near-Fatal Incident." It got worse. The police called me back in for questioning. Sitting in that gray little room, under buzzing fluorescent lights, I felt like I'd already been convicted. "You were aware there was underage drinking, possibly drugs, and you didn't intervene?" one detective asked, his tone sharp. I reported the noise, I called my manager, "But you didn't stop it," he cut me off. I wanted to scream: how the hell was I supposed to stop it? I'm one guy on a night shift, not a SWAT team. But every time I spoke, I could see the same look on their faces: this was easier if they pinned it on me. The powerless guy. The disposable one. Meanwhile, Mr. K was nowhere to be seen. Rumor had it he'd already checked out, chauffeured away in his black SUV before sunrise, untouched, untouchable. But his words stayed behind: "This is your fault." And it was clear to me that the cops, the press, maybe even my own bosses were happy to believe him. Housekeeping staff stopped talking to me, scared of getting dragged in. Guests whispered louder when I passed. Even Rosa, the same woman who'd run to me for help, avoided my eyes now. By the end of the week, HR called me into the back office. The manager sat there with folded hands, eyes darting anywhere but my face. "We think it's best if you take some unpaid leave while this situation is under review." Unpaid leave? I repeated, numb. I called 911. I saved her life. "We just think it'll be better for everyone," he said softly, as if that made it less of a knife to the gut. When I walked out of that office, the news crew was back outside, cameras aimed at me. Someone shouted, "Are you the one who let her OD?" And for the first time in my life, I understood how quickly one night can erase years of hard work, how one powerful liar can flip the world against you. I wasn't the hero who called for help. I wasn't even the clerk who did his job. I was the villain now. The face of a scandal. And deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The word negligence hit me like a freight train. That's what the police report said, and that's what the DA's office started hinting at. Not assault, not direct responsibility, but negligence. A fancy way of saying, you didn't do enough, and now you're the scapegoat. The hotel's legal department called me in for a meeting. I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd back me up. After all, I'd been working there for years, never once had a major complaint. I saved the girl's life. Surely that counted for something. Nope. The conference room was cold, the blinds half closed, 3 suits sitting across from me like a firing squad. One of them, a woman with glasses that didn't budge when she blinked, slid a paper across the table. This is a statement we'd like you to sign. It acknowledges that procedures weren't followed correctly that night and that training will be implemented going forward. I read it once, twice, my hands shaking. This makes it sound like I'm admitting fault. She adjusted her glasses. It's not an admission, it's a clarification. But it will help the hotel avoid liability. So you want me to tank my own reputation to protect the hotel? Think of it as being a team player, she said. I shoved the paper back. Not happening. They didn't push. They didn't have to. The look in their eyes said enough. I was already a dead man walking. Outside the legal meeting, the world was closing in too. Social media was flooded with hashtags, #HotelScandal, #JusticeForHer. People were tagging my full name, even digging up old photos of me from high school. Someone posted my address. I started getting letters, actual letters, in the mail calling me murderer. And the girl? She survived. Thank God for that. But her family went public, and when reporters asked who was responsible, her mother said, the hotel staff should have protected her. They didn't. Protected her from what? From a billionaire throwing a party he wasn't supposed to? From drugs that he provided? From people I had no power to stop? Didn't matter. The story had already been written. Then the subpoena came. Civil court. They were suing the hotel for damages. My name was right there in the paperwork, employee on duty, responsible for oversight. I remember sitting on my couch that night, papers spread across the coffee table, my phone buzzing nonstop with threats and insults, and just staring at the wall. I kept asking myself, when did I become the villain? Was it when I knocked on the door to ask them to turn the music down? Was it when I called 911? Or was it the second Mr. K looked me in the eye and decided I'd be his scapegoat? The worst part? I knew if this went to trial, I was screwed. He had money. He had lawyers. He had influence. I had nothing. Just the truth, and the truth wasn't enough. That was when Harris came in, an old friend of my dad's, a lawyer who wasn't afraid of big names. He looked at me across his desk, cigarette smoke curling in the air, and said, "They want to crush you. But if you let them, you're done. We fight. We drag every witness into that courtroom, every guest who saw what happened. We expose Mr. K for what he is. But you need to decide right now, are you willing to burn your life down to save it?" And sitting there, with nothing left but my shredded reputation and a pile of legal papers, I realized I didn't have a choice. I had to fight. Court isn't like what you see on TV. There's no dramatic music, no Perry Mason moments where the guilty suddenly confess. It's paperwork, procedures, and endless waiting. But the dread? The dread is very real. Harris laid it out for me the night before the first hearing. They're not coming after you for millions. They're coming after the hotel. But make no mistake, you are their poster boy. They'll drag your name through the mud to win sympathy. And Mr. K. He leaned back in his chair, smoke drifting to the ceiling. He's going to act like he doesn't even know you exist. That's his strategy, erase you while making you the villain. He wasn't wrong. The first time I walked into that courthouse, I could feel the eyes on me. The victim's family sat in the front row, their daughter beside them, pale but alive, refusing to look at me. Rosa, the housekeeper who had run to me that night, sat with them too. My stomach dropped when I saw her whispering to their lawyer. I thought she'd back me up. Apparently not. Inside, the lawyers went to war. The opposing counsel stood up, pacing with perfect theatrical rhythm, painting me as a negligent worker who allowed dangerous activity to spiral out of control. He played the narrative like a violin, underage drinking, drugs, an unresponsive young woman, and me, standing by, doing nothing. I wanted to leap up and scream, I was the one who called 911. But Harris put a hand on my arm. "Patience," he muttered. When it was our turn, Harris was calm, deliberate. He pointed out how many times I had reported the noise, how my manager told me to let it go, how I had no authority to kick out a high-profile guest without backing from corporate. He even read a copy of the hotel's own training manual aloud, showing that I had followed procedure to the letter. The judge didn't flinch. No one gasped. But Harris leaned back and whispered, "We got our punches in. Now we need witnesses." And that was the problem. Most of the staff had already been coached by management or worse, intimidated into silence. My co-workers avoided me like the plague. Guests from that night refused to get involved. The priest who had been booked in for a wedding that weekend politely declined to testify. Everyone had an excuse: I don't remember enough, I don't want trouble, I need this job. But then, out of nowhere, I got a call from Miguel, the bellhop. He was just a kid, barely 20, and he'd been the one delivering extra towels to the suite before the chaos. His voice shook when he said, I saw everything. They were doing drugs. The girl was already sick before you even got there. I'll tell the truth. Are you sure? I asked. They'll come after you. I don't care, he said. I can't sleep knowing they're lying. When Harris heard, he cracked his first smile in weeks. That's our opening. If this kid holds his ground, their whole story starts to fall apart. But that hope didn't last long. Because the next day, Miguel's mom showed up at my apartment, tears in her eyes. Please, she begged, tell him not to testify. They already came to our house. They threatened us. And just like that, I realized what I was really up against. It wasn't just lawyers. It wasn't just public opinion. It was Mr. K's money, his reach, his shadow stretching into every corner of my life. That night, I sat in my dark apartment, staring at the ceiling, wondering if fighting back was even possible. Harris said yes. My gut wasn't so sure. Because how do you beat someone who plays by no rules at all? The second week of court felt like a slow death. Every morning I dragged myself into that sterile courtroom, sat at the defense table in a borrowed suit, and tried not to look like the monster the other side painted me to be. The press was there every single day, scribbling notes, snapping pictures. Headlines were brutal: hotel clerk negligence nearly kills young guest. VIP party turns deadly, who's to blame? Spoiler, it was always me. The other side played dirty from the start. They paraded Rosa onto the stand, and my heart sank the second she avoided my eyes. The plaintiff's lawyer led her gently through her testimony: the noise, the chaos, the smell of smoke, and then the girl unresponsive in the suite. Did you see the clerk, my client, take any steps to prevent this? He asked. Rosa hesitated for half a second. Then, no. He just called me when it was already too late. It felt like a punch to the gut. Too late? I was the one who called 911. I was the one who checked her breathing, who stayed with her until paramedics came. Rosa knew that. But her voice shook as she spoke, and I realized she was scared. Scared of losing her job, scared of crossing the Delgados, scared of being dragged down with me. Harris ripped into her on cross, pointing out the contradictions, but the damage was done. The jury didn't see scared. They saw a credible witness. After court that day, I walked to my car and noticed a slip of paper tucked under my windshield. My heart raced as I unfolded it: drop the fight. Or next time, it won't be a warning. No signature. No name. Just those words, scrawled in thick black marker. I showed Harris. He cursed under his breath but shook his head. Without proof who wrote it, the cops won't do a damn thing. You need to focus. They want you rattled. Don't give them the satisfaction. Easier said than done. That night, I lay awake replaying Rosa's words. Too late. Over and over. It didn't matter if it was true. Once said under oath, it became a fact in everyone's mind. The next morning, Harris finally called Miguel to the stand, the bellhop who'd sworn he'd testify. My heart hammered as he walked up, looking like a kid about to be executed. His hands shook as he took the oath. Harris started simple. Miguel, did you deliver towels to Mr. K's suite that night? Yes, he whispered. Did you see the state of the room? Miguel swallowed hard. Yes. There was drinking. Drugs. The girl looked sick even before the clerk came up. For the first time in weeks, I saw the jury lean forward. But then the plaintiff's lawyer stood. He was smooth, calculated, like a shark circling blood. Miguel, he said kindly, how old are you? 20. Still living with your mother, correct? Yes. And isn't it true that your mother begged the defendant not to drag you into this case? Isn't it true she feared for your safety? Miguel froze, eyes wide. My stomach dropped. Of course they knew. Of course they'd found out. The lawyer pressed harder. So why are you really here today, Miguel? Out of loyalty? Or because the defendant pressured you? I know, Miguel stammered. He looked at me then, like I could save him. But I couldn't. The lawyer smiled coldly. No further questions. By the time Miguel stepped down, the spark of hope Harris had lit was gone. The jury wasn't thinking about what Miguel saw. They were thinking about intimidation, about fear, about me as some desperate man pulling strings. That night, I sat in my car outside my apartment for an hour, too scared to go inside. What if someone was waiting? What if the threats turned real? And for the first time, I thought seriously about giving up. Signing whatever paper they wanted, letting them call me negligent, letting them bury me just so I could finally breathe again. But deep down, another voice whispered, if you give up now, they win. And once they win, they'll never stop. The last week of court felt like walking a tightrope over fire. Every day I showed up, face pale from no sleep, and every day the other side hammered me like I was some reckless janitor who left a candle burning until the whole place went up in flames. Harris warned me, this is where they'll go for the kill. They'll try to break you. They'll try to make you look like you don't care, like you're lying, like you're hiding something. And they did. When I finally took the stand, the plaintiff's lawyer circled me like a vulture. You were aware there was underage drinking, correct? Yes, but. You smelled marijuana in the suite, correct? Yes, but I reported. And despite that, you allowed the party to continue? My mouth went dry. I had no authority to end it without my manager's approval. He pounced. So your excuse is, I was just following orders. That's what you want this jury to believe? The jury shifted in their seats. My chest burned. No, my point is. Your point, he interrupted, is that a young woman nearly died because you failed to act. Isn't that correct? Silence. Because what could I say? She had nearly died. Even if I wasn't the cause, the words hung in the air like a noose. When cross-examination ended, I felt stripped raw, like every word I said had been twisted into rope to hang me with. That night Harris came to my apartment with a bottle of cheap whiskey. They think they've buried us, he said, pouring 2 glasses. But tomorrow, we bury them. I frowned. What do you mean? He slid a folder across the table. Inside were bank statements, receipts, and a list of phone records. Mr. K wasn't just throwing a party. He was funneling money through shell accounts to pay for what happened in that suite. And one of his buddies flipped. I blinked, stunned. Flipped? Cut a deal, Harris said. He admitted Mr. K supplied the drugs. He admitted the girl was sick hours before you even knocked on the door. Tomorrow, we put him on the stand. I didn't sleep that night, my mind racing between hope and fear. If Harris was right, this could blow the whole case open. But part of me worried, what if the guy chickened out? What if Mr. K's money bought his silence at the last second? The next morning, the courtroom was packed. Reporters filled the benches, cameras flashing. Harris stood tall, called the witness, and in walked one of Mr. K's friends from that night, rumpled suit, bags under his eyes, looking like he hadn't slept in weeks. He swore in, sat down, and Harris began. Did Mr. K provide the drugs used at the party? The man hesitated. The room held its breath. Then he nodded. Yes. He paid for everything. He told us not to worry. And was the young woman already unwell before my client entered the room? Yes. She was vomiting hours earlier. We told Mr. K we should call someone. He laughed and said she'd be fine. A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Rosa's head dropped. The girl's mother gripped her daughter's hand tighter. The plaintiff's lawyer objected, tried to tear him apart on cross, but the damage was done. For the first time, the spotlight shifted. It wasn't me on trial anymore. It was Mr. K. And when Harris sat down, he leaned close and whispered that, my friend, was the crack in the armor we needed. But even as relief washed over me, I glanced across the courtroom. Mr. K sat in the back, perfectly calm, smirking at me like the devil himself. And in that smirk, I understood, this battle wasn't over. Not here. Not in court. Because men like him don't lose. Not cleanly. Not quietly. And I wasn't sure if I'd live long enough to see what came next. The final day of court felt unreal, like I was watching someone else's life from the cheap seats. The jury filed in, stone-faced, no hint of what they decided. My palms were sweaty, knees bouncing under the table, Harris scribbling notes he didn't need just to look calm. The judge cleared his throat, adjusted his glasses, and read the verdict. The case against the hotel would proceed, but all claims of personal negligence against me were dismissed. Just like that, one sentence, and months of being dragged through the mud evaporated. I didn't cry. I didn't cheer. I just sat there frozen, as if my brain refused to believe the words. Harris nudged me. You're free. You hear me? You're done here. The girl's family hugged, tears of relief mixing with disappointment. They still wanted justice, but now it was aimed at the hotel and, hopefully, Mr. K. For me, it was over. Outside the courthouse, cameras swarmed me like bees. Do you feel vindicated? Do you have a message for the victim? What's next for you? I shoved past them, muttering no comment, Harris acting like a human shield. That night, I walked home through the quiet streets, no reporters, no cops, no bosses breathing down my neck. For the first time in months, the air didn't feel heavy. I thought maybe, just maybe, I could start over. But then I saw him. Mr. K leaned against a black SUV parked across from my building, cigarette glowing in the dark. He looked relaxed, almost bored, like the trial had been nothing more than an annoying meeting on his calendar. When our eyes met, he smirked. Congratulations, he said softly. You won your little battle. He flicked the cigarette, sparks scattering on the pavement. But don't forget, I still own the war. Before I could respond, the SUV door opened, and he slid inside. The tinted windows rolled up, the engine purred, and the car melted into the night like a shadow. I stood there, heart hammering, the echo of his words clinging to me like smoke. Yes, I'd survived. I wasn't in prison, I wasn't broke, and I wasn't branded guilty in a court of law. But my job was gone. My reputation was ashes. And a man like Mr. K, powerful, untouchable, venomous, was still out there, watching. Some victories don't feel like victories at all. And sometimes, survival is the only win you get.